This is lesson 1.5. Test yourself exercise number 1. In module 1, you learned how to navigate your way around Vectorworks, how to create simple objects, and how to add text and dimensions. I'm going to show you an exercise I'd like you to finish. I'd like you to try to create the following drawing using the skills and techniques you learned in module 1. When you first look at this exercise, you might find that there are both imperial and metric dimensions. I'd like you to choose one. Either follow the imperial dimensions or follow the metric dimensions. Please do not try to follow both. Here's the exercise that I'd like you to follow. Now remember, either the metric or the imperial, not both. When you look at this exercise, you might think to start with that you don't know enough to carry out this exercise. It just uses simple rectangles, some with color, some with line weight, and a circle. You should be able to complete this drawing with the skills you've developed from module 1. Before you go ahead and watch this movie, I would like you to try doing this exercise on your own. Please try it on your own, and then if you'd like to, please watch the rest of this movie. I'd very much like you to try it on your own so you can see that you know quite a lot about how to do this exercise. I'm going to start off by using the same exercise we were using in the previous lessons. I'm going to delete everything. Now you can either click and drag your marquee over everything to select it, or you can right click and you can choose select all. Either way will work fine. Then you can delete. The next thing I'd like to do is to change my page scale. Right click, active layer scale. Not activate layer, but active layer scale. We want to scale round about 1/4 inch, 1 to 50 maybe, and for most of this exercise I'll be using imperial measurements. Okay, and you can see my grid has changed. It's much easier to see my grid, but you might remember that my grid was about 39 inches across, about a meter. File on the menu bar, document settings, and units. You might remember earlier on we looked at saving some of these units, so we learned how to save our units as millimeters or feet and inches. So for the rest of this session I'll be using the feet and inches. Click OK, and now we can start drawing. If you do want to change your grid, don't forget, double click on the grid snap. You can come up here and you can change it. This should really be about 39 inches, and OK, so that's really close to a meter. I don't like drawing by snapping to my grid, so I will turn that off. So where are we going to get started? Let's start with a rectangle. Now the first time you look at the plan that I'd like you to do, you start thinking, I don't know if I have enough. Remember, the purpose of this exercise is to show you that even though you've only learned how to draw a few simple rectangles, that's enough to create a plan. So we're going to start by creating a plan. I'm going to start by creating the base area. So I'm going to double click on my rectangle tool. This brings up my dialog box. Now the width of my object is 1.5 feet plus, and I'm using the plus sign, 6 feet 10 inches, 6 feet 10 inches plus 18 inches. 1.5 feet is 18 inches. And I can mix all of those up together. Hit the tab key to go to the next area down. Now if you're using the metric dimensions, that was 455 millimeters plus 2085 millimeters plus 0.455 meters. And again, we can mix all of these up. The only thing to watch out for is just here, make sure you put in either the millimeters or the centimeters, whatever your units are, because we've set ours to feet and inches, so Vectorworks would expect any number in here to be feet and inches. I'm going to set my box position to the center, like that. Position it next. Click is turned on. Here it is, it's turned on. I click on it again to turn it off, and I can set my origin of my object to 0, 0. So really, you can see there's the 1/8 of an inch out difference between the metric and the imperial. So I'll just type that in as 9 foot 10 inches. So they're both the same. When I click OK, the center of my rectangle will arrive at 0, 0, and there it is. The next thing I'm going to create are the little rectangles for the planters on the corner. Double click on the rectangle tool, so I could either type in 18 inches, 1 feet 6 inches, or I could type in 455 millimeters. So let's go 18 inches that way, 18 inches that way, and now I can change my box position. So I'm going to change it to the top left, and I'm going to say let's position this at the next click. So the top left corner at the next click, let's click OK. So it wants to know where this object goes. So that corner there, click, and it places it there for you. So let's double click on our rectangle tool again, same size, but this time a different corner. So I'm going to use that corner there, click OK, and you can see a little ghost image of my rectangle. It should make it easy for you to locate. Double click on the rectangle tool again, let's do it to that corner. Double click on my rectangle tool again, and we'll do it to the bottom right corner. Double click again, and we'll do it to the bottom left corner, that one there. And click, and it's done. So that's pretty quick. We've actually got our planters in place. Let's do the steps. They're reasonably easy. I'm just going to scroll in a little bit to make it easier. So now I can draw a rectangle by clicking, pulling that out. How wide are my steps? Well, my steps are 355 millimeters. So 355, which is 14 inches. So let's hit the tab key, minus 14 inches, enter once. And you can see Vectorworks fixes the width for me, so then I can touch the top of my planter there and click. I can create another one. So again, tab, minus 14, enter, and click. Once more. I should be able to type minus 14 if I've set my settings correctly. Enter and click. Now if you've used your settings correctly, I'll just show you where they were. Window, data bar options. I changed this earlier in one of the earlier lessons. Allow numeric keypad entry for instant data bar activation. So I can type in minus 14 without hitting the tab key. So there are my steps in place. Now all I need is my rectangle here for my fireplace. Now I've given you the dimension in two parts. It was 1 foot down this way, 12 inches down that way, and 1 foot 8 inches up that way, or 20 inches up that way. So how am I going to do that? Well, if I start by creating a rectangle, so double click on the rectangle tool, I'm going to set the box position to the top center. The width of my rectangle is 3 feet 8 inches, or 1120 millimeters. So that's 3 feet 8 inches. The height we just said was a foot, or 12 inches. If I just check carefully, that's 10 inches. So let's make that 10 inches. And I can now position that at that location. So I've got the center of that rectangle, the center top of that rectangle, where I need it to line up with the center of my patio. If I change my box position on my object info palette just here, then it's easy for me to add the required height. So I need to add on to this 20 inches, or plus 1 foot 8 inches. So if using the metric, it was 255 for the first part, and then add on to that 510 millimeters. When I hit the enter or the return key, it creates my additional area. It extends my rectangle, and so it's in the right place. The only thing left is a circle. Now I haven't shown you how to draw a circle yet, so I'm going to use my circle tool, use it with the second mode, which is the circle by diameter. Start at the top center there, find the center of my rectangle there, and there's my circle. Just about all in place now. All I need to do is put in a table. So double click on the table. This table is going to be about 6 feet long, and it's going to be about 3 feet wide. So that's 1800 millimeters long and about 900 millimeters wide. And I've got position at next, click turned on. And you'll notice that I change this box position a lot when I'm working. I'll make sure I choose there, I'll choose the corner. This really helps me to position these objects accurately. Find the center, click once, and now all I need to do is to position a few simple chairs. So I could double click on the chair tool again. I'm going to choose that option. The width of a chair is about 18 inches, I suppose, and I want it to stick out from the table by about 8 inches, and OK. So then I can just place one there, double click on my rectangle tool, OK, I can place another one there, double click on my rectangle tool, change my box position so I can place one. If I want to, I can touch that point there, make sure they line up, double click on my rectangle tool again, find that position there they line up. This time, if I want them to go the other way, that has to be 8 inches, that has to be 16 inches. Let's say 18 inches that way, change it to that box position there, and double click, change to the other box position, and there. So how's that? That's not so bad. What we're missing are some colors and some line weights. So let's remember we selected that part. That needs to be a sort of a brownish color. There's one there. We also would like to look at our line weights. Now don't forget, we looked at this earlier, the zoom line thickness. So as we zoom into an object, it helps to emphasize the line weights of that object. So we need to have an outline to this object. This is the thinnest line we've got, so let's give that a little bit of extra line weight. My steps, I'll select all of those together. They should be a little bit thicker so they stand out a little bit. These should be perhaps the same thickness as the background, so 0.35. This area here stands out, it's a little bit higher, so I'll select that, and my chimney flue. We'll make those 0.5. And so you can see how it helps. The zoom line thickness helps you to read the line weights. Let's just zoom out a little bit because now it's time to dimension. So we can use our dimension tools. We've used these previously, the constrained dimension tool, and we're going to use the chain dimension for some of these. We can use the single dimension for the overall size, so we can click there, and place our dimension. Click here, and we can place our dimension. Now you might notice that my text is quite large, so I'm just going to undo those two. That's the Control Z, and I'm just going to go up here and have a look at my text. So remember, format text, we're working on 24 point, we'll make that 12, and we'll make it Arial narrow for our default. Remember, we could just pick it from here. This is our standard, our style, and that should improve the size of our text. So there's my first dimension, there's my second dimension here. So I accidentally clicked, so I'll just delete that. So click there, and place my dimension there. And that should be enough to give the overall size. Let's go to our chain dimension, so we can click from that corner to that corner. We can place the first dimension, then click for the second, the third, the fourth, and double click to finish. Click to start, click for that, place that dimension. Now there's my text there, so I don't want to be too close to that. Click and double click to stop. So click, we want to place it there, click and double click to stop. Click here, click there, I'm going to place that out there, click there and double click to stop. And there are my dimensions. So you can see from this exercise that what we learned in the beginning, the idea of the dimensioning and the color and changing the line weight and just using simple things like rectangles, gives us the skills to actually start creating our own drawings. It's a good idea to practice this exercise a couple of times just so they get used to the speed which you can draw. Well, this is the end of Module 1. And I hope that you can now see how you can take what you've learned from Module 1 and apply it to your real projects. This is the end of Module 1. In this module you learned how to work with the Vectorworks interface, you learned how to control selection and snapping, you learned how to control graphics, and you learned how to place text and dimensions.